You rewatching The Mummy and Brendan Fraser's character opens the mysterious Book of the Dead, clued accidentally unleashing an ancient curse that brings the dead back to life. But here's the thing. Hollywood got it completely wrong. The real Egyptian Book of the Dead isn't a resurrection device. It's not even really a book. And it's definitely not about bringing the dead back to our world. What it actually is far more fascinating. Today, we're diving deep into one of humanity's oldest and most sophisticated guides to the afterlife. We're going to examine the actual Papyrus of Ani, nearly 20 meters of sacred Egyptian text that reveals how ancient Egyptians believed you could not just survive death, but thrive in the world beyond. I'm about to show you archaeological evidence, actual hieroglyphic translations, and hidden meanings that will completely change how you understand ancient Egyptian spirituality. This isn't just about mummies and pyramids. This is about a civilization that developed what they believed was spiritual technology for navigating eternity. And by the end of this investigation, you'll understand why these texts were so powerful that they were mass-produced across ancient Egypt, why every symbol has deep meaning, and how this 3,000-year-old wisdom still influences spiritual beliefs today. So forget everything Hollywood taught you about ancient Egypt. The truth is far more incredible. Chapter 1. The Great Misconception. Let us start by destroying the biggest myth about the Egyptian Book of the Dead, because almost everything you think you know is wrong. First, it's not a single book. The Book of the Dead is actually a collection of about 200 separate independent texts. Think of it like a spiritual anthology, where different scribes would select which chapters to include based on what the deceased person could afford or what their family thought they needed most. No two books of the dead are identical. Some have 20 chapters, others have 150. They're not in the same order. They weren't meant to be read like a novel. These were magical texts. The Egyptians believed the words themselves had power to protect and guide the deceased. But here's some most important misconception. It's not really about the dead at all. The Egyptians called these texts Pere-em-Heru, which translates to words for coming forth by day or words for coming forth into light. Think about that. They were unfocused on death as an ending. They were focused on emerging into a new kind of life, a solar, bright, vital existence in another dimension. This is completely different from how, say, the Mesopotamians viewed the afterlife. For them, the underworld was dark, dreary, and depressing, but for Egyptians, the afterlife was as bright and solar as our world, because the sun god Ra spent 12 hours there every night, illuminating the realm of the dead just as he illuminated the land of the living. These texts evolved over thousands of years. They started as pyramid texts, exclusive spells carved into royal burial chambers that only pharaohs could access. Then came coffin texts, painted inside the sarcophagi of nobles and high officials. Finally, around 1400 BCE, we get the Book of the Dead, democratized spiritual wisdom, available to anyone who could afford a papyrus scroll. And that brings us to our star witness, the Papyrus of Ani. Chapter 2. The Papyrus of Ani. Ultimate survival guide Meet Ani, a scribe from the city of Thebes, who commissioned what would become the most famous and complete Book of the Dead ever discovered. Ani wasn't a pharaoh or a high priest. He was essentially a middle-class bureaucrat. But he invested in the ancient Egyptian equivalent of premium life insurance, a nearly 20-meter-long papyrus scroll packed with spells, prayers, and survival instructions for the afterlife. 20 meters. That's about 65 feet of sacred text. Imagine unrolling that in your living room. It would stretch across multiple rooms. This wasn't something you casually read. It was rolled up and placed in the tomb, where the words themselves would work their magic. The papyrus opens with Ani and his wife, who was a temple singer making offerings. Notice the symbolism here. Triangular incense cones, cow legs, a premium offering, bread, lotus flowers. Every element has meaning. The lotus is particularly important. It opens every morning with the sunrise and closes at night. For Egyptians, this daily resurrection made it the perfect symbol for rebirth and renewal. The deceased would follow the same pattern: death at sunset, rebirth at sunrise. Next, we see the worship of the sun represented by the Djed pillar, a symbol of Osiris, lord of the dead, but also of stability and endurance. The solar disk is being raised by an ankh, the symbol of life, while baboons sacred to the sun god and the goddesses Isis and Nephthys offer praise. This is all preparation for the main event, the scene that would determine Anna's eternal fate, the moment where his entire life would be weighed, measured, and judged. The Weighing of the Heart. Chapter 3. The Weighing of the Heart. Judgment Day. Now we arrive at the most famous scene in all of Egyptian funerary art, the psychostasia, or weighing of the heart. This is where everything we've learned comes together in the ultimate test. Picture the scene. Ani approaches a massive scale. On one side sits his heart, which Egyptians believed contained not just his emotions, but his memories, his experiences, his entire moral record. On the other side, a single ostrich feather representing Mat, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. Presiding over this cosmic courtroom is Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, carefully calibrating the scale. Above, the scribe god Thoth, represented both as a baboon and as an ibis-headed man, records the results. But notice who else is watching: Ra, the sun god, Osiris wearing the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, and dozens of other deities. This isn't just a personal judgment. It's a cosmic event witnessed by the entire pantheon. If the heart balances with the feather, Ani proves his life was lived in accordance with Mat, truth, and justice. He'll be declared justified and gain access to the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. But if the heart is heavier than the feather, weighed down by lies, cruelty, or injustice, it will be devoured by Ammit, the devourer of the dead. Part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, this monster represents total spiritual annihilation. No afterlife, no second chances, just ... nothing. The accompanying spell, spell 30b, is essentially Ani talking to his own heart. O my heart, which I received from my mother, do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not be opposed to me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. ... Double quotes. Think about this psychologically. Ani is essentially trying to convince his own conscience not to betray him. He's arguing with his memories, his guilt, his regrets, trying to ensure his own moral record doesn't condemn him. In Ani's case, the judgment is favorable. Otho declares, I have judged the heart of the deceased, and his soul stands as witness for him. His deeds are righteous on the great balance, and no sin has been found in him. Success. But the journey is far from over. Chapter 4. Opening the Mouth. Restoring life after death. Here is something that might shock you. Egyptians believed that simply dying was unenough to access the afterlife. Death left you blind, deaf, mute, and paralyzed. To truly live again, you needed your senses restored. Enter the opening of the mouth ceremony, one of the most important rituals in ancient Egyptian religion. The papyrus shows us a priest in a leopard skin robe approaching Ani's mummified body with a ceremonial adze. A curved blade used in this sacred ritual. Accompanying spell reads, My mouth is opened by Ptah, and what was in my mouth has been loosened by my local god. Thoth comes indeed filled and equipped with magic, and the bonds of Seth which restricted my mouth have been loosened. Seth represents death, constriction, the binding forces that leave a person helpless. But through this ritual, those bonds are broken. The deceased regains the ability to speak, see, hear, taste, and smell in the afterlife. This wasn't metaphorical to the Egyptians. They believed these spells literally restored function. The mouth could speak prayers and incantations. The eyes could see the wonders of the afterlife. The hands could receive offerings. The feet could walk through paradise. A papyrus shows the funeral procession, professional mourners wailing, a common practice in the ancient Near East, treasures being carried to the tomb, and the careful transportation of Ani's mummified body on a sledge pulled by oxen. Notice the professional mourners. These were hired women whose job was to grieve dramatically for the deceased. This wasn't considered fake or theatrical. It was seen as necessary spiritual work, ensuring the dead received proper lamentation. With his senses restored, Ani is ready for the next phase of his afterlife journey. But first, he must face an even more comprehensive examination of his moral character. Chapter 5. The 42 Judges' Confessions of the Innocent. If you thought the weighing of the heart was intense, wait until you hear about the 42 judges of the afterlife. This is where Ani must prove his innocence not just in general terms, but in excruciating detail. Picture a vast hall filled with 42 divine judges, each representing one of Egypt's provinces. Each judge has a specific name and domain, and Ani must address them individually, proving he committed no crimes in their jurisdiction. But here's the crucial part. Ani must know each judge's secret name. In ancient Egyptian magic, knowing someone's true name gave you power over them. By demonstrating this knowledge, Ani shows he has the spiritual authority to stand before these cosmic judges. These are called the negative confessions, and they read like a comprehensive moral code. O wide strider who came forth from Heliopolis, I have not committed falsehood. O fire embracer who came forth from Karha, I have not robbed. O nosy who came forth from Hermopolis, I have not been rapacious. O swallower of shades who came forth from the cavern, I have not stolen. This continues for all 42 judges, covering everything from theft and murder to gossiping and sexual misconduct. What's remarkable is how sophisticated this moral code is. It shows ancient Egyptians had developed a complex understanding of ethics that rivals any modern system. But think about the psychology here. Ani isn't just claiming innocence. He's publicly declaring his moral purity before cosmic judges who can see into his soul. This is confession, absolution, and moral affirmation, all in one. The text declares, I am pure, 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 and no evil shall have power over me in this land, nor in this hall of justice. Because I know the names of the 42 gods who are in it. Successfully passing this examination admits Ani to an exclusive club, the followers of Horus, those who have been spiritually justified and can enjoy eternal life in the field of reeds. Chapter 6. Mass production, ancient Egypt's spiritual industry. Here is something that might surprise you. These sacred texts were mass-produced, using ancient assembly line techniques that would unlook out of place in a modern publishing house. Archaeologists have discovered leather templates that scribes used to produce multiple copies of Book of the Dead papyri. Think of them as ancient printing plates. They delay the template over the papyrus and trace out the standard spells and illustrations. Even more interesting, many papyri were pre-made with blank spaces where the customer's name would be inserted later. You could literally walk into a scriptorium, purchase a ready-made Book of the Dead, have your name filled in like a spiritual Mad Lib. Just like today's market, there were different quality levels available. Premium versions like Ani's with full-color illustrations and complete spell collections. Standard versions with basic illustrations and essential spells. Budget versions with minimal decoration and abbreviated text. This represents a massive democratization of spiritual technology. What started as exclusive royal magic, available only to pharaohs, eventually became accessible to anyone who could afford a papyrus scroll. Scribes, merchants, skilled craftsmen. The production of these texts supported entire industries: papyrus makers, scribes, artists, paint makers, and religious consultants who would advise families on which spells their deceased relatives needed most. This mass production is why we have so many surviving examples today. While royal pyramid texts exist in only a few copies, we have hundreds of Book of the Dead papyri, giving us unprecedented insight into ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs. The accessibility of these texts meant that Egyptian afterlife concepts spread throughout their society and influenced neighboring cultures. This wasn't elite religious knowledge anymore, it was popular spirituality. Chapter 7. Modern Implications. What this means today as we conclude our journey through the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's worth asking, what can this 3,000-year-old wisdom teach us today? First, notice how sophisticated ancient Egyptian thinking about death was. They didn't see death as an ending, but as a transformation, a journey requiring preparation, knowledge, and spiritual technology. The emphasis on moral self-examination, from the weighing of the heart to the negative confessions, shows a culture deeply concerned with ethical living. They believed your actions in life literally determined your experience in eternity. The Egyptians developed what they considered spiritual technology. Specific words, rituals, and knowledge that could influence the afterlife experience. Whether you believe in their effectiveness or not, the sophistication of their system is remarkable. Many concepts from the Egyptian Book of the Dead influenced later religious traditions. Judgment of the dead based on moral behavior. The importance of knowing sacred names and words, restoration of the body and senses in the afterlife. Paradise as a place of eternal light and abundance. These texts provide us with one of the most complete windows into ancient religious thinking we possess. Unlike many ancient cultures whose spiritual beliefs we can only guess at, Egyptian funerary texts give us detailed, first-person accounts of their afterlife expectations. Finally, the Book of the Dead reveals universal human concerns that transcend time and culture. What happens when we die? How should we live? What constitutes a meaningful existence? Can we somehow survive beyond physical death? The Egyptians spent thousands of years developing answers to these questions. Whether you find their conclusions convincing or not, their commitment to spiritual preparation and moral examination offers valuable insights for anyone grappling with life's biggest questions. The next time you see an Egyptian mummy in a museum or watch a movie about ancient Egypt, remember, you're not just looking at preserved bodies or Hollywood fantasy. You're re-witnessing the remains of a civilization that devoted incredible resources to answering humanity's deepest questions about life, death, and what lies beyond. And perhaps that's not such a bad way to spend eternity, in pursuit of wisdom, truth, and spiritual understanding.